Over 2,000 US servicemen lost their lives in the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor. More than 80 years later, efforts continue to identify those who perished in this tragic and historic event. Due to the deep respect owed to those interred in the wrecks of Pearl Harbor, including the USS Arizona, only a select group of divers are authorized to explore these sacred sites. Among their responsibilities is the solemn task of scattering the ashes of servicemen who have chosen to be laid to rest alongside their fallen comrades in these historic vessels. In an effort to honor the fallen and preserve the integrity of the wrecks, members of the Paralyzed Veterans of America participate in an annual dive. This ritual not only commemorates the lives lost, but also involves monitoring the deterioration of the ships, cataloging items in the debris field, and assessing the environmental impact of the wrecks. The USS Arizona, in particular, continues to leak oil into the harbor, highlighting the ongoing preservation needs. All wrecks, including the remains of over 180 aircraft lost that day, fall under the care of the National Park Service. They are entrusted with maintaining these watery graves, ensuring that the remains of those who sacrificed their lives are treated with the highest respect and dignity. Unlike her sister ship, the USS Arizona, the USS Pennsylvania suffered minimal damage during the attack. Her crew was among the few who managed to return fire, engaging the Japanese planes in defense. A survivor from the ship reflected in 2021, recalling their efforts to fight back during the devastating assault.
It was instant confusion, pad scrabble confusion.
The USS Pennsylvania was quickly repaired, departing Pearl Harbor less than 2 weeks after the attack. Despite being hit by Japanese bombers, one bomb destroyed a 5-inch gun mount, killing all its crew. In total, the ship lost 15 men, with 14 missing in action. By December 20th, the Pennsylvania had made it to San Francisco for further repairs before rejoining the fight in the Pacific. Her swift recovery and resilience were a testament to the ship's endurance and the crew's determination. On December 7, 1941, 353 Japanese aircraft launched a surprise attack on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, thrusting America into World War II. The assault caused immense devastation. Aboard the USS Arizona, 1,177 men perished, marking the greatest loss of life among those stationed at Pearl Harbor. Of the ship's 1,511 crew members, only 334 survived. According to the National World War II Museum, a bomb struck the Arizona's forward powder magazine, triggering a catastrophic explosion. 80 years later, one of the few survivors shared his experience with the Today Show, reflecting on the horror of that day.
Where we were high. I could see all of Pearl Harbor. Wow. We would see the planes flying. We would hear the boom.
The USS Utah, already decommissioned before the Pearl Harbor attack, was mistakenly targeted by a Japanese pilot. 6 torpedoes were fired at the ship, which would not have been involved in further Pacific battles. Tragically, 58 men lost their lives, either trapped inside the sinking hull or while attempting to swim through the flaming oil covering the water's surface.
And when they hit, they did catastrophic damage to the ship.
The USS Utah, along with the USS Arizona, is one of 3 warships deemed a total loss from the attack, and she still rests in Pearl Harbor, with some of her crew members' remains on board. For years, the men who perished aboard were not officially acknowledged. As reported by the Honolulu Star Bulletin, Chief Yeoman Albert Wagner, a Utah survivor, later visited the wreck, expressing his deep feelings about the lack of recognition for the fallen sailors still entombed within the ship. There was nothing but mud then, and no indication that there are men still aboard. It wasn't until 1972 that a memorial slab and concrete pier were established at the site. Today, Navy personnel honor the fallen by raising and lowering a flag daily, paying tribute to those whose remains rest within the wreck. The identification of Eldon Wyman's remains marked a pivotal moment in the effort to identify the fallen servicemen of the USS Oklahoma. After initially being buried in small cemeteries, the remains of 429 men from the Oklahoma were transferred to the Central Identification Laboratory at Schofield Barracks in 1947. However, only 35 men were identified at that time, relying on methods like dental records and dog tags. The establishment of the Defense POW/MIA Accounting Agency in 2015 significantly advanced the identification process. Researchers at the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory worked closely with families and descendants across the country, leading to the successful identification of many more servicemen. The lab's director, John Bird, said to Politico, we've identified over 90% of these individuals. The progress made so far has sparked hope for identifying the remaining 45 unidentified servicemen whose remains were recovered from the USS California and USS West Virginia, continuing the vital work of bringing closure to their families.
I don't think families ever can get closure, but they can get answers.
The USS West Virginia, a dreadnought of the Colorado class, was struck by 2 bombs and 7 torpedoes on December 7, 1941, during the attack on Pearl Harbor. Weighing 32,000 tons, the ship was severely damaged, but through remarkable bravery, Captain Mervyn Bennion ensured the ship stayed upright, even as he lay dying from his wounds. His quick thinking prevented the crew from being trapped in an overturned hull, saving many lives. Despite the captain's efforts, some sailors were still trapped in sealed compartments as the ship burned. It wasn't until 2 years later, during the West Virginia's repair and refitting, that the bodies of 70 men were recovered. Among the grim discoveries was a calendar with days marked off up to December 23rd, more than 2 weeks after the attack, showing how long some of the men had been trapped. Amid the devastation, there were countless acts of heroism. Survivors, forced to dive into burning oily water, fought to save each other. One ensign, who was ashore at the time of the attack, swam back to the West Virginia to help rescue his shipmates. Despite suffering heavy losses, the actions of the crew that day became a testament to their courage and resilience. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, many bodies were recovered from the harbor and warships and were laid to rest in the National Memorial Cemetery near the harbor. Over time, DNA testing helped identify the remains of 70 men who perished aboard the USS Arizona. Further testing was also done on victims from the USS Oklahoma. In the aftermath of the attack, the government decided to gather the remains of those lost aboard the Oklahoma into sets, attempting to match as many bones as possible to a single skeleton. However, this method led to remains being mixed together, and many victims' identities were lost. In 2003, a casket believed to contain the remains of Eldon Wyman, recovered 2 years after the attack during a salvage mission, was subjected to DNA testing. While Wyman's remains were identified, the test revealed something unexpected. The casket contained the remains of 90 different servicemen, not just Wyman. This discovery underscored the challenges of properly identifying and honoring the fallen soldiers after such a catastrophic event. Of the 1,177 crew members aboard the USS Arizona, only 107 bodies were identified. The remaining 1,070 were either unaccounted for beyond recognition or trapped in areas of the ship that made retrieval impossible. Just months after the attack, US officials decided to leave the Arizona in its sunken position, designating it as a mass grave. The decision was made out of respect for the fallen, acknowledging that recovering the bodies with dignity would be an insurmountable task. Today, the USS Arizona remains submerged in Pearl Harbor, a solemn memorial for those who lost their lives. The memorial structure above it, designed with soaring white wings, attracts 1.7 million visitors annually. Operated by the National Park Service, the site is a sacred place of remembrance. The attack on the Arizona remains the deadliest in American naval history. One survivor shared his memories with the History Channel, reflecting on the tragedy and its lasting impact.
The fire from the Arizona was so intense. These guys that fell over, came up, got the film on their bodies, were like human torches.
Despite enduring a barrage of bombs and torpedoes during the attack on Pearl Harbor, the USS California managed to stay afloat for 2 days before eventually sinking. Throughout the chaos, the crew demonstrated extraordinary bravery in defending the ship. In recognition of their valor, 4 sailors and 1 officer from the California were awarded the Medal of Honor, the U.S. military's highest honor. Ensign Herbert Jones, the senior officer present during the attack, displayed remarkable courage by rescuing a sailor from a smoke-filled compartment before being fatally injured in another explosion. He refused to leave his post, prioritizing the lives of others. Though the California required over 2 years of repairs, the ship, which had lost nearly 100 men, was restored to combat readiness. It returned to the battlefield, participating in several key naval engagements before the war concluded, a testament to the resilience of both the ship and her crew. One of the most unforgettable images of Pearl Harbor is the explosion of the USS Shaw. During the second wave of the attack, the Shaw was struck multiple times, hitting her machine gun platform, forecastle, main decks, and crew mess hall, where many sailors were eating breakfast. About 30 minutes after the initial assault, a massive explosion ignited the ship's forward ammunition magazines, sending a towering fireball into the sky. The ship was consumed by flames, and the captain gave the order to abandon ship. While many crew members managed to jump into the water and escape, 24 men perished in the attack and ensuing fires. Remarkably, despite the heavy damage, the USS Shaw was repaired and back at sea within months, earning an impressive 11 battle stars for its service. During the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, numerous ships, including the USS Nevada, Helena, Curtis, Chew, Dobbin, Enterprise, Maryland, Pruitt, Sicard, Tracy, Vestal, Downs and Tennessee, suffered casualties, resulting in 535 servicemen killed. The Nevada, weighing 27,500 tons, was the only ship to get underway during the assault. She faced intense bombardment but managed to beach herself after losing 50 men. Despite the damage, the Nevada was salvaged and later participated in significant battles, including the Normandy invasion. Tragically, she was later used in atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll, where she became so contaminated with radiation that she had to be sunk. The USS Helena, despite losing 33 men, distinguished itself by shooting down 6 Japanese dive bombers. In the midst of the attack, her crew fired an astonishing 375 shells, engaging fiercely with the enemy and showing incredible resolve. The resilience and bravery of these ships and their crews remain emblematic of the courage shown during the attack on Pearl Harbor. The tragedy of the USS Arizona's losses was matched by an even grimmer fate for the 429 sailors aboard the USS Oklahoma. Struck by 8 torpedoes in the first moments of the attack, the ship capsized just 2 minutes later. The crew members trapped inside faced a suffocating pitch-black steel tomb. Mortician Caitlin Doughty explained to the Mirror that the sailors endured unimaginable conditions, making their deaths even more harrowing for both them and their families. For the families of those that died aboard ships like the USS Oklahoma, there is no closure, as no wreck remains of the battleship. The bodies of the men who perished, trapped in the upside-down hull of the USS Oklahoma, were recovered quickly as the ship's remains were salvaged. In many cases, the bodies were mixed together in caskets, making it impossible to identify them individually. The Oklahoma itself met a further fate as it sank in the Pacific Ocean while being towed for final salvage on the West Coast. Today, a memorial on Ford Island in Pearl Harbor stands as the sole place where families can honor and remember the sailors lost aboard the Oklahoma, paying tribute to those who died in such tragic circumstances.